What's up, everybody? This is Talkative Carl back again for another spoiler review for another Star Wars movie. Uh, we are, leaving off from Rebels, getting right into Star Wars Rogue One, the next in canon timeline frame. I want to make a note of this because I never brought it up in like previous reviews so far, but I took a notice to like the technology uh since I started from Phantom Menace up until now at this point. And I see where they're going at, but it's kind of funny how like, in the original trilogy, given the fact it was, created in the late 70s into the 80s, the technology was used was supposed to be like the futuristic, but of the time of the times, the kind of futuristic technology that was being used, and from like the prequels and certain things in like even the TV shows of like Rebels and Clone Wars, it seems a little bit more of the times too, but times of relatively in the past 15 years. And, well, not like, they're not using our technology. It's like in our mindset of modern times of what technology would be in the future of Star Wars. But you get what I'm getting at. Is it's like, watching like, Rebels getting towards when it's ending and like Rogue One, and it's like they're slowly creeping into like, I guess because it's a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago kind of stuff. It seems like their technology is like going backwards because it seems like the screens. Like if you take a picture, like you look at the screens and compare it from like what you see in like the prequel trilogy, and you're looking at like something like Rogue One and the original trilogy, you see like the screens, it seems more, like the prequels look like very touchscreeny kind of stuff, to where like, yeah, this, that makes sense. But then and it seems more like HD quality, while you're looking at screens by the end of Rebels into Rogue One, and then into like the original trilogy, the screens you've seen images on the screens in these, it seems very 8-bit kind of stuff, and it's like, wow, that's like, because like I said, it kind of makes sense. You gotta have the technology match up for what you saw in the original trilogy. You can't. It's just like, wow, that's like very drastic. It's something I want to point out. It's like, wow, that's kind of, distinct. But anyway, I remember. Well, I should get into the story, but I was going to just mention this here. I remember going to the theaters to see this because I honestly did not have like, high hopes. This is when like, the Star Wars stuff was going like during these dips, and it's like a roller coaster with like these Star Wars stuff, and like when they're in their highs, they're in their highs, but when they're in their lows, it's like, ugh. I mean, like, it's just depending who you ask, but it's like, because like Solo, that was a thing. Not like that was bad or by any stretch. I'm not saying it was like trash or anything, but it's like, it's like, I don't think anybody would lose sleep if it was never made in the first place. And Rogue One, I put in that same camp as Solo, where it's like, I get why you did it, but I don't think none of us would lose any sleep if it never was made in the first place. But I guess they, in order to keep like this money train going, we have to make stuff that's at the very least in between or way in the past or way in the future, far beyond the main canonized films from prequel, original, and sequel trilogies. And I went to the theater because my father is like, he knows his fair bit of stuff. I mean, like, he digs Star Wars, and like he's the one that got me into Star Wars when I was a little kid. Uh, he went and took my youngest brother to see this when it was released in the movies. Uh, I had to see I saw it like a day earlier than he did because I had to work on a day like he went. I was working like a different job a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And when he came home, I remember when I came home, because I saw it first, he asked me how was it. And I remember telling him, like, it was decent, But the end, though, this is where it's like, there's, a few spots towards the end is kind of like really, like, excellent. But by and large, it was straight. I told him he'll probably still get some enjoyment out of it. It wasn't trash. But, when he got home from after he saw it and he came home and told me about it, it's like, yeah, you're right. It was all right. But wow. And I don't think he wasted time watching the Solo movie. He probably saw it when it came on TV at some point. I don't know. I didn't bother to ask him. But it's, yeah. Even after rewatching it, because this is the second time me seeing Rogue One, because I saw it only one time, and that was in the theaters. I never ever went back to see it, and this is the first time in a long time I watched it again. So, this story began. Here's another thing. These characters, I had to have their names pulled up because these characters are like, aside from like Saw Gerrera, who I think this is officially, like, I want to say it was officially, it's hard to say which came first, because in my mind's eye, maybe the Mandela effect kind of situation of it, in my mind's eye, this movie was released in 2016. In my mind's eye, I think Saw Gerrera, this was the first time we saw Saw Gerrera in anything. And then in like these TV shows, he is sprinkled in here and there. But maybe the TV shows introduced him first. It's hard to say. I think it's kind of blending the mix. But I think he's like the only one that, I'm not the only one, besides like everybody else who's in like the original trilogy, or is going to be a part of the original trilogy. He's like the only other supporting kind of character that we've seen before that we could easily remember, because Forrest Whitaker, for the most part too. But and then him and this like K2SO, which I had to warm up to him because people loved K2SO, and I was, it took me a hot minute to warm up to him. But by and large, these characters are easily forgettable, and even by their names, it's like it's like one in out the other kind of situation. But the movie begins with like Mads Mikkelsen, who's like almost in every doggone thing at this point, who plays Galen Erso, who is like the main designer of the Death Star. And let me go over the names. You got like Felicity Jones is Jen Erso, the daughter of Galen. Diego Luna is Cassian Andor. It's funny, his last name is Andor, but it's spelled differently. Ben Mendelssohn as Orson Krennic. Donnie Yen as Karit Imwe. Uh, Mads Mikkelsen. Uh, Alan Tudyk as K2SO. Riz Ahmed as Buhai Rook. Zhang Wen as Baze Malbus. And Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera. But yeah, Krennic arrives on Galen's like farm, and obviously Galen's trying to hide away from Imperials, but it's like I'm thinking to myself after the second time watching it, it's like because I didn't think of it at first, like why did you? I'm pretty sure he thought he was like pretty far away, and they would not go and search for him, but it's like you obviously did not do a good job at like going so far out the way to not be found. I mean, like, did you bother to change your identities? So nobody can like easily look up your name. Do something. Part of me feel like they probably made it too easy for Krennic to find them, especially if they're supposed to be like when Galen was a part of the Empire, supposed to be like friends or whatever. So he parks his ship miles away from Galen's home. Don't know why he didn't park even closer, and he got to do all that long walk. But Galen and his wife send their daughter away, young Jen, while Galen's trying to distract Krennic. The wife gets gunned down while trying to like, fight back or whatever. And I guess they like had like a hookup with Saw Gerrera. Saw came and pick up Jen, obviously to look after her. And fast forward present day. And by the way, I want to mention this because when trailers or still images was being put out to promote this movie, I still to this day, the one thing outside of the story of this movie that I still remember every time it's being brought up, I still remember how everybody was so convinced that Jen was going to be like, everybody suspected that she was going to be like the person that, like, well, in the Star Wars books, there's a character called Mara Jade, who's supposed to be like Luke's wife after the events of Return of the Jedi. And obviously that didn't turn out that way. But it's like, we already know how the sequel trilogy turned out that way, but it's like, wow, they could not bring in Mara Jade for no reason. Like, where's Mara Jade? Because, it'd be just a crying shame to have, like, the Skywalker bloodline just ends with the twins. And it's just like, that seems off to me. It's like, it seems like a shame. And like, just, I know people complain about like, oh, the Skywalker lineage and the stories. It's like, we're done with the Skywalker story. Yeah, but it's like, you gotta have a Skywalker, bloodline continue in some shape or form, and know that there's always gonna be one out there. There's like pretty much like a dynasty of heroes. It's just a shame that it's gotta be cut off that way. Not that Mara Jade is just there to, pump out a baby for the Skywalker bloodline, but she's like a badass in her own right. If you ever read any comics or books about her. But anyway, Yeah, that's what everybody was suspecting Jin to be. Like, since he got a different name, we were just thought, well, maybe she's just like a kind of Mary Jade, which is so similar to Mary Jane if you're thinking about it. Even if you look up the pictures of Mara Jade, I'm pretty sure I got that person. It's like the person I have in my mind kind of looks like uh, Mary Jane with the red hair. At least I'm picturing the right thing. Let me do a quick look up. I'm sorry. Yeah, Mara Jade. Yeah, yeah. She definitely had like red hair. Yeah, that's so funny. You look up pictures of Mara Jade, Mara Jade with a J. She usually seen with a purple lightsaber, but she has, like welding goggles. Obviously, she's an engineer, which I'm pretty sure somebody like Luke would appreciate. But she definitely, yeah, she got a purple lightsaber, and she has red hair. It's so funny. She is like she pretty much just the like the Mary Jane Watson of Star Wars. That's so funny. Anyway, uh, uh, the Rebel Alliance finds uh, Jin in this like being held up by some Imperials with some other group of captured people. She is released and brought to Mothma and some group of senators, that's secretly building a rebellion or financing the rebellion, and she's brought on to help find her father, who's the architect of building the Death Star, and this is the point where you meet like Cassian, and he's like and this is the moment where you because this and Clone Wars and Rebels is the few times you get in a Star Wars movie an actual war, and like in this one more specifically, you get like espionage and things like that. And Cassian is supposed to be like he's supposed to be like the not exactly like 007, but he's kind of like you know early days, 007, where it's like things are get to him, and it's like he's obviously weighed by like the horrors he's probably have to do for the sake of the rebellion, because you see like it's from the original trilogy, you get like, oh, it's black and white, the rebels are doing what they know is right, which is true, but the toll it takes, of what they, because they're not always like just stormtroopers. They have to get information, they have to sell out people, or like do, not all the way ill-gotten stuff, but there's probably gonna be some things they have to do for the sake of the rebellion in order to get a one up on the Empire. And Cassian had to shoot a guy to make his escape in order, who was giving him like it was supposed to be like an informant for him to look for this rebel pilot that defected, which I don't know how or why the defector Rook didn't go out and find this the central hub of the rebellion or whatever. His whole thing was, it's kind of weird, but you end up in the hands of Saw Gerrera. But it's, I don't know why, like looking for that guy who's been part of like a well-known rebel extremist. Why'd you go to him and find like the main people who's not, extremist? But anyway, Cassian is on an orders separate from Mothma by another commanding officer to find, when they find the father, assassinate him right then and there on the spot. So without their, main guy, they don't have like the brains behind the operation to complete their task. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if they had this guy for at least a hot minute, you don't think that they don't have like any kind of like, blueprints or, records of him, like, doing experimentations and designs and all this other stuff they probably would have saved on file somewhere in order to, in case something happens to this guy where he might have a heart attack or choke on, a piece of meat or something like that, that they don't have something as a backup plan, so that way any other engineers can just copy what he did to continue forward long after him, or whenever he finished with the project. It's like, assassinating him just gonna put a pause on it, but it's not gonna keep them from like try to just recreate it, maybe not to the best level but to a level. But they go, and of course, like you meet like Krennic, and like when I mentioned about like in Rebels during my reviews of those 4 seasons, there's quite a few leaders like what's that blue guy from Rebels? Crap, what was that blue guy from Rebels? I'm sorry, this is gonna bug the crap out of me. Thrawn, Thrawn, that's his name. There's very few Thrawns in the employ of the Empire, surrounded by a bunch of guys like Krennic, who is just like out for like glory and like the, admiration and whatnot, and just to lick the boot of the Emperor. And it's like seriously, like, that's all he seemed to care about. It's like, like, because he's getting his butt chewed out by Tarkin, who, Peter Cushing has long since been dead by the time the making of this film. And they CGI, or at least like do the either a combination of CGI and like de-aging, not like drastic de-aging, but it's just like do something to fill the guy in. And they do this quite a bit, like not even just in Star Wars, but in like, in like Tron Legacy with like not Josh Brolin, Jeff Bridges. And his moments is good. It personally, because personally I did not really mind, honestly, but people who are like more in the know with like the technology behind all that stuff, they'll see it, the imperfections, more often than your average person, and the defects will probably bother them more so than anybody else. And me, who doesn't, if I had that knowledge, I probably will have the same feelings like, oh, this is, grotesque. But like, since I'm blissfully ignorant, it doesn't bother me as much. But you got like Tarkin, which, by the way, like, I never like, I liked Tarkin as a bad guy. When I first saw him in like the original trilogy, he was cool, but I didn't really pay him no mind. Because, for the bulk of it, wasn't even about him. He was like a added bad guy next to Vader. He's only shown in one film. I think, like, after doing this massive stream of all the Star Wars stuff, I've grown to understand the appreciation of Tarkin, especially in the Clone Wars. Can you see that? Because in case I don't bring it up, because I'm going to be doing a review of New Hope right after this, but I want to mention this here in case I forget. Seeing Vader and Tarkin, just side by side and like, running like the Death Star and so forth in A New Hope, harkens back to, or Tarkins back to, uh, the Clone Wars when Tarkin was introduced in like the second to last season, I think, and they're him and Anakin's little like meaning of the minds and like understanding like how like war should be playing out and how, going far as you need to, or even further sometimes, and like blase blase blase. It's like these two like like easily have been best friends, and you see these two just work well together. Like unlike anybody else, there's only two people that Vader probably will listen to. Besides, is either the Emperor or Tarkin. Anybody else on any Imperial like space station, he doesn't suffer no fools. He does, not. I mean, unlike Kylo Ren, who's pretty much like a tryhard, and like get mad at a drop of a hat, and like people are so afraid to tell him anything. You can see like a cool comparison, or at least I would say a contrast to how Vader leads and how Kylo Ren leads. Vader, despite like his evil doings, Vader shows a mark of leadership, and like a decent enough leadership to where it's like his men, when it comes to him, they have that fear, but they also like have like respect in a way, because like they're not afraid to go to him whether it's good or bad news. Now Vader will probably be perturbed with any bad news, like, oh, we failed to find like the rebel hideout or whatever like that, and Vader's messes like and you see this with like Krennic when he goes to Vader, is like giving him all this nonsense, because you want to be like, and you'll tell the Emperor of my good, like how well I did, and you subtly force chokes him, and it's like, don't choke on your aspirations. And people like make fun of that because it's like a total dad joke, but I thought it was kind of funny. That was like a legit funny. I got a legit laugh out of that. And of course, I love James Earl Jones as Vader, but you can obviously hear that he's been doing this for so long. You can hear the tiredness in his voice, and it's like you gotta let like someone like Hayden Christensen to try his own version of the Vader thing and run with that for a good 20 or 30 years, or ever how long the Star Wars franchise is going to continue, because James Earl Jones is too tired at this point, and he's not always going to be around, and you can't deep fake that voice. You gotta at least try something new, either like a sound like, or just have Hayden Christensen do his own thing or his own version of it. But Vader, he won't kill you right away. That's the thing. He won't kill you right away. He'll let you know, like, you got another chance at this. Like, and I think he mentions something like this in if not New Hope, I think Empire. It's like he's telling his supporters, like, you got one more shot at this, and if you fail again, the Emperor is not going to be too happy, and he's much less forgiving than I am. That kind of thing, it's like, but Kylo Ren would just kill people outright, just out of just try hardness, trying to be like fearful and intimidating. He wants to be like Vader, and it's like, he just doesn't have that mindset of Vader's. Then, uh, as they're trying to find Saw Gerrera, and they find out he's on this moon Jeddah, which used to be a uh, like a sacred ground of the Jedi. But since the Jedi is, all but extinct, and there's only probably like 5 to 10% of them left out in the galaxy, where it used to be numbers in the thousands, and probably like at least like 5 to 10% of them left, and the Empire is like harvesting Kyber's crystals out of the Jedi temples, which is very like sacrilegious and blasphemous, and it's like very like just it's like very colonizer way of doing, just pillaging a sacred artifacts from a race of people and using it to your own ends. Obviously, to we later find out to power the Death Star, that kind of power weaponized into a single cannon can easily blow up a planet, which is what their goal is, and it's powered by kyber crystals. Lots of it. And and this is where it gets a very Saving Private Ryan kind of moment, where you see, well, I think most of his movies, when it comes to the war parts of it, they get not graphic, but at least close enough to see where, wow, like this is intense. It's not like space wizards and starship battles all the time. It's like when you're in the thick of it on ground level, when these other like Saw Gerrera's people try to do like ambush on these like this Imperial patrol unit, and it's like causing like devastation. Doesn't like they don't care about like civilian casualties. It's like right near a freaking market, and Jen had to say this little girl, which is kind of really got to me in the theater. I was like, oh my god, this is like effed up. And you see later in the third act during like the final battle, even more intense. It's like this is real war. And after the little fight, because they meet up with Donnie Yen playing this blind warrior, obviously, and obviously he's like not like he's possibly force sensitive, but because of the eradication of the Jedi, he obviously wasn't brought in to the order when they probably would have sensed him, because I'm one of the force with me, and people repeated that a lot. It was almost annoying. And he does all this cool stuff, and he's using the staff, which everybody expected, by the end, like, oh, he's gonna pull that apart and he's gonna turn to lightsabers, which never happened, but people expected it. It was like so like almost in our heads, like this is gonna be a freaking lightsaber, and it's like he's gonna pull out, it's gonna be awesome. Which if you ever watched like How It Should Have Ended YouTube show, and they did a video about this, and it was funny because like they showed it like, oh, I put it, oh, like since when you got base asking like when you get a lightsaber, oh, I always had it, and it's like and starts like cutting up people. It was hilarious. But I was like, yeah, it's kind of like who directed this? Because like you set all this up, Garth Edwards, or Gareth Edwards. It's like, how you set all this up and you don't just like, I think in his mind he's supposed to be like subverting expectations, but like sometimes that can backfire in my personal opinion. Sometimes it doesn't happen often, but sometimes it's like you gotta do what people expect, especially if you set it up so hard to where it's like, oh, he's so like, but I guess he's forced. I won't say it's hard to say he's like force sensitive, because you don't see him using force powers or moving things with his mind like that, or even on a subtle level. No, he's just like, excuse me. He is just very like a yoga kind of you know, you know, Zen kind of guy. But he obviously, maybe not on like on like moving things with his mind kind of level, but it's the way he's connecting with Jin and other people, and it's like he senses things through the force since he doesn't have eyesight. But he should have just made him have a lifesaver in his staff. That's just kind of obvious. Then he got a partner named Baze, and it's like he's just like, oh, he's just like the soldier that shoots first and asks questions, later kind of attitude kind of guy. A lot of these characters, you're not ultimately going to miss them, honestly. But then again, at the same time, you never get, like information on like why these two are partners together. Whereas that's, they never even bother you and say like, oh, I was basically say like, oh, I was trying to raid this Jedi temple, blase, blase, blase. The Empire, saw me, and I was, was in like in danger of dying, and then like this guy showed up and saved me, and even despite me trying to raid his stuff, he looked out for me, he saw something in me. Boom. It's like, that can easily be explained. These dudes were like, buddy cops from that point on. Something like that. And like they meet up with Saw Gerrera after Saul was trying to interrogate the guy Rook for information. And it's like he doesn't believe Rook of what he says. Like, I'm looking for Saul and got information you might need, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't believe anything. It's a trick. And it's like, and using this tentacle porn monster to try to, find the truth from him. And it's like, why? Like, it's like, I get it, like, you're skeptical about like his intentions, but it's like you still got him locked up even after you pretty much violated him with a tentacle monster, and you don't think his like information is good, despite him playing like a recorded matches for Jin later. And it's like their relationship doesn't seem like one of, at least if we don't get like at least a flashback of Saul teaching Jin how to fight, shoots, to like survive when she lost her parents, at least give some, inkling of a relationship. Because this is like two people that met each other maybe like one time in like a day or two, and like, and they went their separate ways, and they don't see each other for like a good like 10 years, and they come back and like, oh yeah, I know this guy. And it's like, it's not like a heartwarming moment that you kind of half expected. But Saul plays the recording of her father, who explains basically that he intentionally but subtly put in the vulnerability of the Death Star that we see later on Luke exploit. And for the longest time, we all, because even in like one of my favorite Kevin Smith movies, Clerks, mentions that, that's like, about that severe, even Family Guy mentioned during one of their Star Wars special, mentions about how that huge design flaw. But now with this movie, they which I kind of like. I think this is a very smart thing on this movie's part, to where it's like, no, that design flaw wasn't an accident. It was purposely put there because we know the designer wasn't with the Empire and what they stood for, so he want to make sure that to give the rebels a fighting chance by exploiting this very small weakness, and which Luke later did. So it was, I think it was smart to where it's not like happenstance. This is actually done on a specific purpose. So, you know, Krennic and Tarkin test the Death Star, which is on like a lower level than what we've seen in the original trilogy, where it blasted near this little pocket civilization near Jeddah, and it causes massive, like, devastating crater. The blast is almost on a level of like a almost like a nuclear bomb kind of stuff, where it's like something goes off and like probably minus the radiation, but I don't know, because I don't think kyber crystals have any kind of radiation to it. Otherwise, why would you use it? But the shockwave and the blast was so massive. Was still looking at it, it's still impressive of a feat of footage. And like the blast wave just erupts the ground, like, raise it, like to like unbelievable levels, to where you can even see it from space. The other like event. And while Cash and Jin, Donnie Yen, I was gonna call him Donnie Yen, I'm not gonna remember his movie name, and Baze, along with Rook and K2SO, escape on the ship and get out of there before they're caught up in the blast. But for some reason, Saw Gerrera decides, I'll stay behind and die with the in the city. Don't know why. Could just easily like leave and like plot your next retaliation. But I guess he's maybe like old at this point, which doesn't seem that old, especially when he's like got half cybernetics keeping him alive, and he's obviously got like a rebreather thing, or like a kind of like a big giant inhaler that he can like breathe into. Who knows? And it's like, who knows his age at this point? We met him all the way back in Clone Wars, and like, yeah, he's like, he could have easily have been like, give him like a generous 20, probably age 20 at that time when we first met him in Clone Wars. So let's say it's been like, so he should be bare minimum in like in his mid 50s by this point in Rogue One, because definitely some chunk of years went by, and it's just, and Rogue One is just on the tail beginning, I should say, of A New Hope. So like Luke at this point is in his 21 at this point, and so yeah, it's like a decent 30 35 year gap between when we first met up until this point. So especially with those cybernetics, he could have at least trucked on for at least 5 more years, at least, because despite everything, Saw Gerrera is like a decent character that you could have done like at least a few more things with. And another thing, that's like before his little cybernetic stuff, which they never explain how that even happened. Now I'm thinking about it, because rewatching this and going over the past like Star Wars stuff that I've been reviewing so far, where is that gap of time where it's like something happened to him would cause him to have like a few cybernetics, like you got like a cybernetic leg and a rebreather, something happened to him like in a fight, and it's never explained. And matter of fact, we don't even see that in Jedi Fallen Order, as a matter of fact. So somewhere between Jedi Fallen Order video game up until this point, something had to happen to cause him to like have this kind of like magic, not magic, massive surgery to keep him alive. So that is like left unexplained. That is just very funny. But anyway, the pilot explains where Saw Gerrera is. They go to this, I forgot the name of the planet, but it's like a very rainy planet, hidden in all these, the mountain range. There's like a facility where the Empire is keeping their engineers, talking kind of like, and Vader, as a matter of fact, explaining like, okay, there's got to be a leak or something going on, and they get, Krennic to go all the way there, talking with like Galen, and which is funny, a little fun fact here. Galen is also the real name of Galactus, the Marvel character Galactus. His real name is Galen. And Galen, ironically, both characters are responsible for destroying worlds. Fun fact. So anyway, uh, the rebels, because Cassian couldn't pull the trigger to assassinate Jin's father, which I guess they spent enough time together to feel bad, not wanting to do this. Despite like probably maybe because obviously is the whole him doing these like horrible things for the rebels that you think he wouldn't probably have to do because they're supposed to be above all this. Because they don't want to be, because that's something Saw Gerrera would do, but like, war, as you see in Clone Wars, war causes people to do like things that they never thought they would probably do. But obviously it's kind of weighing on Cassian, and it's hit this critical point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. But the Rebel Alliance, thinking something happened to them, they, take some ships, come in, start blasting up the area. This caused Galen get mortally wounded. Jin comes to him, and they say they final goodbyes. They go back, her and Jin gets like kind of in an argument. And in the time of the theater, I'm thinking to myself, like, you're going to let this guy just like, even though he said he didn't end up pulling the trigger in the end kind of thing, even though she lied to him. Well, she should understand, like, like, yeah, like, what he did was fucked up, but it's not laid bare on him totally. But he is a soldier. They're going to have to do some effed up stuff. It's like you coming in and assisting for some reason with like some spec ops mission, and one of the leaders had to like do something awful. You chastising them, you more than likely, no matter how right you are, because on a moral standpoint, you can't like judge him as a soldier for doing what a soldier would do in the thick of war. Unless it's like really atrocious, like trying to, bomb an apartment full of civilians, innocent civilians that's not part of this. Aside from something that extreme, like you can't like, judge him harshly like that. But at the same time, yeah, he should understand her feelings in towards this whole situation, because that is her father, and who she thought was long dead, and she still cares for, obviously. But it's like, the whole entire thing is just, ultimately it doesn't really matter. It's just like, I didn't feel nothing for it, and there was nothing added to it to make it like a good scene at all. They go back to the Rebel base, which was established in Rebels, ironically. Towards the end, they find like they've been all through like the Star Wars Rebels. They gotta find like a good permanent base for the Rebel Alliance to build their stuff, and you get to see like towards like the beginning of the last season of Rebels, what's in the Ezra Bridger trying to like, oh, we need to get these like not planes, but like these jets or whatever, starships or whatever, to the people, and you get to see them here and in like New Hope. And I was like, oh yeah, it's nice. It's like all interconnected. It's nice to see those things that was established in a TV show. That I give like a generous C plus on overall. I think I gave it like a B minus, so it's somewhere between the C plus to B minus area. This, Rebels is very low tier for me. It's for a mid tier at best for me. In terms of like in all the Star Wars stuff, it's like it's only slightly better than Rise of Skywalker. So this is the part that like even in the theater, it kind of speaks to like the issue Saw Gerrera had with like the main rebellion forces. It's like Mothma is speaking with all these other leaders around the table, along with Bail Organa, and like, oh, we cannot send our forces. We are so like outnumbered, and they got this kind of weapon. What are we gonna do? We should run. We should surrender, or we should just play along. We should stay neutral. Well, and they all like bickering, which is pretty much like government of real life when they bicker amongst each other, can't agree on jack shit half the time. And it's like Saw Gerrera mentions in like the Rebels, it's like they instead of doing what they need to do to like stop these people who's clearly doing wrong, they sit there bickering amongst each other, which he's right in a way. It's like you know that you see him doing wrong, and you're half of y'all are being cowards. And I understand there's like politics involved, but like you let it get in too involved when it's something this massive of a circumstance where like these guys are building a weapon that not only kills a wider amount of people, but it destroys other planets. I think the time of deciding like what course you should do, or was it's like or not like what course necessarily, but it's like having difference in opinion on like each person has like a difference of opinion, and it's like no, we all got to come together and figure out like how to deal with this, because they could easily use this on a whim. It doesn't matter what's planet to them, because you've seen like the Empire do some really atrocious stuff. You don't think for 1 second they even kill their own people if they like fail to do a task. You don't think for 1 second they don't test drive this freaking thing or use this for on a planet, a homeworld to a person that they think is an enemy. And it's like, there's no question about it. You gotta like step in and like deal with that. It's not really a bickering amongst each other needed. If there's anything like below that, maybe there's some discourse for discussion. But like massive genocide, there's no discussion. There shouldn't be a discussion. So they all decided like, okay, we can't, we gotta, they can't agree, so we can't step in without the full backing of everybody. It's like, God, it's like politics all over again. So Jen, Cassian, and like, everybody we saw in the movie so far, come together on a ship, call it Rogue One, and decide, we're gonna go there and get the plans for the Death Star to bring it back to the Rebel base, so we can like launch a counterattack, and prove to the rest of the galaxy what kind of monsters the Empire is, despite their propaganda of like, they put up about themselves. And they go there, and like Cassian, Jin, K2SO, they go inside while the rest, start like a diversion. And while they're trying to download the plans and everything like that, the rest of the rebellion figure out what's going on after like shit just starts blowing up. They go there, and it's also in space battle, where it's like, you got like starships crashing into each other, and like, and they're trying to destroy this massive shield that's covering the planet, so they can get some people inside and try to get like the downloaded plans up to one of the ships above, which eventually they do. Cassian takes down Krennic, and Tarkin fires like the low frequency Death Star beam near the base where they're keeping like the plants. The plants get out. They manage to beam it up to one of the ships, and of course, like Cassian and Jen end up dying in the whole thing. Everybody ends up dying. Like I said, you don't care about these people, like the main cast in this movie, because they don't stick around. So this is part of where it gets fucking awesome, because you got these rebel guys, because nobody really thought about it. I wasn't even thinking about how close it is to A New Hope it was, because they once they get like, because they got like a floppy disk, because I told you, it's like you can tell the era the original trilogy was set in, not set in, but like was made in, the kind of times it was made in. They got floppy disk, so they downloaded the plans onto this disk, and they sitting there bringing it down the hall, all the while Darth Vader shows up because he boarded their ship, and started chasing down for the plans. And because this is the first time, because like I hear from people who was born during the time where the original trilogy was out in theater, because I wasn't born yet. I think lots of us in my generation wasn't born yet by the time this movie was being put into theaters. The original trilogy was in the theaters, and people mention how like scary Darth Vader is, and I never understood like he's cool. And of course he's threatening and everything, but like he's like scary. It's like you put him on the level of like like Jason Voorhees kind of level of kind of scary for the way they was talking. But it wasn't until, because I guess most people mention like, oh, you had to be in the theater in order to know. And it's like, but when I sat in the theater, because I'm gonna probably tell that to my kids one day, it's like you just had to be there, because this dude was freaking scary. But I got Rogue One, so this could easily had like I don't know if they'll get the same feeling, but it's like they'll probably at least get a better inkling than my generation did when people of our older generation told us about. But he comes down that this like dimly lit or at least pretty much darkened hallway, and it's kind of like Daredevil, because like Daredevil really set the stage for hallway fights, and this is like right up there as far as like awesome hallway fights, to where he just coming in like a bloody path. And it's like, it's a shame, I won't say a shame, but it's like if this was rated R, this would be like really like gruesome. There's blood and guts probably everywhere in that hallway, where it's like he was cutting a bloody path, and they had no chance, not a snowball's chance of fighting. As many times they blasting at him with their blasters, he's just like pulls their guns away, just slicing and dicing them, throwing people up in the ceiling, slicing them there, and just like blocking blasts. And it's like it's just all too easy to them. And then like they're just like a football, like they passing the plans down to the next person, they go into the next hallway, and they shutting the door behind him. He's just coming through. It's awesome. I was like, holy crap, this dude is fucking scary. It's like, can you imagine? I was like, I'll be fucking terrified. And it's like the doors are locking. It's like a horror show. Oh my god, it was like fucking awesome. Oh my god. And it's like they finally get the plans into the bulk of the ship, and the ship takes off right as Vader is about to come through. And it's like, and it turns out to be the ship where Princess Leia is on. But yeah, man, that and leads right into A New Hope. But I also gotta mention, because I never brought it up in any of the other previous reviews, Stormtrooper armor. Why do they wear it when it doesn't do jack shit? I mean, blasters is one thing, but like, you know how many times I've seen like people, like even in Rebels and Clone Wars, like smashing to unless you're Chewbacca strength or something like that, you try like two guys with motorcycle helmets on and try to like bump their heads together and knock them out. Won't work. It makes no sense. They're wearing, it's a legit plastic like any Comic Con goer. It's like, you know, even then it shouldn't cause you to get knocked out. And like, you know, it's like, it's armor. You should have some defense against it, and it's like it offers no defense. It makes no sense to me. What's the point of this armor? It might as well not. It's like, I remember Family Guy. It's like, I mean, a joke about the Battle of Endor, and it's like, again, like one guy get hit in the chest with an arrow, and he's screaming like, you know, this armor is useless. Why do we even wear it? And it's like, yeah, exactly. You shouldn't be like taken down by anything less than a blaster. This is armor, space armor, as a matter of fact. And they kind of explain, I think in Clone Wars or Rebels, I forget which, but they explain how, like, you know, why, like, oh, these, you know, why it's so hard. I think it's in Rebels. Why it's so hard to aim and fire on target? Because like inside the helmet, the vision is like kind of hindered, like at least peripheral vision or something was hindered. So like it caused you to like not aim effectively. That's why it explains why the stormtroopers never hit their targets all the time. Because they mentioned this, now that I bring it up, because I'm afraid I will forget it. Every time it comes to my mind, I got to mention it before I end up forgetting it, because I probably would. In New Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi explain how like, oh, these Jawas are dead, and like you saw all these scorch marks on their vehicle, and it's like, you know, these are stormtrooper stormtroopers did this. You can see like the something like pinpoint accuracy, and it's like, I just laugh at pinpoint accuracy. Okay, whatever. It was like stormtrooper pinpoint accuracy. Yeah, okay, whatever. But yeah, that was Star Wars Rogue One. It's all right. It's still, after all these years, my second time watching it, it's all right. Yeah, it's like Solo. It's very middle of the road. It's not terrible, and it's like it's worth watching at least once or twice. But I don't even think like you'll revisit it all that much because it's so. Matter of fact, you probably revisit the prequel trilogy, you know, a little bit more often than you do with any of these two. So anyway, I'll be back in a little bit with my review for Star Wars: A New Hope, and which is, by the way, there's like a very massive theme running. It's, you know, like, you know, getting towards like well, even at the beginning of the Phantom Menace, it's like Qui-Gon Jinn sees, you know, like young Anakin Skywalker is bringing balance to the Force. It's like he's our hope, and like, you know, and like in this movie, it's like rebellions are built on hope, and it's like, you know, in Rebels, it's like, it mentions like, oh, you know, it's about hope, and it's like, you know, hope for a better tomorrow kind of situation, or like bring it into this kind of terror. So it's like, yeah, you know, that's like a major thing. Not even just in like a few movies. It's like in almost everything in like the canonized stories, or even like, well, they all kind of intermingle here and there, but it's like the theme of hope runs deep in almost everything Star Wars related. It's not even just in one film, which is, I think that is a cool thing. It's like the massive point they try to drive into with everybody, especially when it comes like dealing with hardship, because like, you know, just like, you know, hold on. My Blue Lantern Ring of Hope. It's all about hope. No matter how dire things get, you have to have hope for a better tomorrow. Because that's the thing. Without hope, it's like people's like desperation sinks in, and people like 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 God forbid stuff to do self harm to themselves. It's like hope is a natural driving force of humanity in general, and like it's that need. It's like hope for a better afterlife, hope to get us out of like a daily struggle, hope to get us out of this war, hope to get out of this pandemic. Hope drives us to get things done, to make miracles happen in order for a peaceful life. And it's like it rings so true in the Star Wars franchise. So it's like very one-to-one in real life. So anyway, yeah, I will see you guys in a few minutes. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Target of Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. My Patreon is also on the links in the description if you want to further support the channel and you have ideas for reviews you want me to do. Please, definitely check all that out. And I will see you guys soon.